Hello, my name is Raquel, and my work is on authentication of grass-fed beef using fatty acid profile. Next, please. As you may know, there's an increasing preference for organic and pasture-fed beef. Therefore, we need authentication methods. And in this study, we are going to evaluate if we can use the fatty acid profile to distinguish beef according to the diet of the animal. For that, we conducted a few feeding trials. We had animals at pasture, others were at pasture and then they received grass silage. Others were partially grass-fed, which means that they got some concentrates. Some of these concentrates were enriched with sunflower oil or linseed oil. And for the last group, the animals only received concentrates. We took a sample from these animals, which we analyzed for fatty acids by gas chromatography. And then we used this data to develop discriminant models, which we validated with an independent data set, which means that the samples weren't used to develop the model. Next, please. The first model was developed to discriminate between grass-fed beef, partially grass-fed beef, and concentrate-fed beef. If we look at the results on the top, we can see three groups clearly separated, an accuracy of 98%. And when we look at the validation, we see that both grass-fed and partially grass-fed samples were correctly classified. However, when we looked at the samples from animals supplemented with vegetable oils, the predictions are not correct because they were predicted as grass when they are actually partially grass-fed. That led us to model 2, in which we took into account these two diets. And if we look at the results, we can see 5 groups fairly separated. And when we look at the validation, we see that all these groups were correctly classified. Next, please. And the third model was developed to distinguish between two very similar diets, pasture and a combination of pasture and grass silage. This is important because grass silage, even though it's made from grass, it could mean that the animals were indoors. If we look at the results, we see 4 groups, more or less separated, but when we look at the validation, we got mixed results. So to summarize, yes, we can use the fatty acid profile to distinguish beef according to the dietary background. Yes, we can authenticate grass-fed beef based on the fatty acid profile. However, there's still some challenges, such as authentication of pasture-fed beef. Next, please. Thank you for listening.